SPORTS. Alan Quinlan is with us this morning. Alan, good morning to you. How are you?
Good, lads. Thanks. And yourselves?
What kind of a week have you had?
Not too bad. No, I suppose always difficult to be doing the Munster dissecting of a bad loss at the weekend. But so the podcast was a bit negative this week, to say the least.
That's fair enough. I think there are sometimes when you just have to. Things don't feel right at the moment. What's when people are talking to you about it? What are they saying to you? Like, what's the atmosphere like amongst Munster fans who know when they're talking to you that this means so much to you?
Yeah, people online, I think you can see the reaction, and I suppose some of it is a little bit nasty, and some of it is balanced and fair. And I think being balanced and fair is where you want to be, really. You don't want to hide away from the fact that the issues and the problems, and it's kind of looking like they'll peter out again. This season will peter out again with no trophy again for Munster. They always seem to have a bit of bad luck as regards the injuries and players available, and that comes down to squad depth and strength of your squad, and for all the clubs, particularly heading into Europe and in their domestic leagues this year. That's you want players fit and healthy and your best players, and I think Munster are in a position at the moment where now there's a number of players out injured, and there was last weekend, and would they make a difference to them? Yes. Is the playing style coming back to bite them a little bit again? Yes, it is. And so I think a lot of I suppose there's an air of deflation amongst the Munster fans, and I was saying that coming out of the ground last Saturday. I don't even get slagged anymore in Dublin, which is, things aren't great when that's not happening. But look, there's a frustration there amongst the Munster fans. I think, it's been a long, long time since they won a trophy, and trophies are hard to come by. Some teams are at a different level, and unfortunately Munster are still not where you would want them to be.
Yeah, like Leinster needed Munster to be great to drive Leinster on to greatness, and you would feel that that could happen again, that Leinster could do it, having Munster be really good again, and actually occasionally beating them and keeping them sharp. It's not really good for Irish rugby to have Munster the way they are at the moment.
It's probably not good for Irish rugby and for neutrals and for people going to the games, but I don't think Leinster are too concerned. They're pretty happy that they're the dominant force in this fixture in the last number of years, and they keep winning them, and they can mix and match their team a little bit and still be in a position to win the fixture. So yeah, of course it'd be better. The same with Ulster and Connacht. I think it'd be, if you had, like every year, Jerry, we the start of every season, Leinster keep coming up as the top province, as the team to beat. It would be good if there was if we were factually correct in saying that Ulster, Connacht, Munster are in the mix, and they could win the domestic league or go on a big run in Europe as well and potentially win the tournament. I think when you probably where Munster want to get to is certainly from a Munster point of view is that you're talking about them possibly being in a position to win Europe and be certainly in the mix right at the end. I know they have been in a number of times in the last 7 or 8 years, but there's an inevitability about where they'll finish from. Probably semi-finals if they get there, and even in this run, if they were to get through Exeter, they could potentially be at home, providing it depends what happens in the Ulster-Toulouse match. They could potentially be at home in a quarter-finals. And they could get to that position, but yeah, look, I think it would be great if they got up to that level, and that's the goal. I think there is some young players that always give a little bit of, I suppose in the last couple of seasons are giving more optimism, but there's still a lot of stuff to be sorted out there, and that's the worrying part.
Like, using Europe as a barometer is an interesting one, because obviously you have the seasons of 17, 18, 19 where they get to the semi-finals. In the last couple of years, obviously, they didn't get there. So have they gone backwards again from 2019?
It just depends. Munster were always good, even if they hadn't the biggest or strongest squad in Europe. They were always could manoeuvre themselves through the pool stages, get a home quarter-final, which we know from history it's very difficult for anyone to win away from home in quarter-finals, and then you're suddenly in a semi-final on. So sometimes you can be a bit unlucky with where it goes, or lucky. So I don't know. I think the frustrating part is probably the playing style and the progression of I suppose being comfortable in matches, and when you watch the game, that you can see tactically they're very astute and they're a very hard team to beat. I think they've become probably an easier team to manoeuvre around and to get a result against, because they don't have this dominant force up front, 8 forwards who are going to make it incredibly difficult for you. They're trying to change the way they play, but they're not good enough at what they're doing and how they're doing that. So have they gone backwards? Well, I don't know. I think there's probably better players now than there was a couple of years ago. If you go back to when Rassie Erasmus got Munster into that semi-final against Saracens, I think this playing group is probably more talented and there's probably more flair to it. But they're an easier team to beat, which is worrying.
One last question.
I think
one last question on this. Peter Marnie was asked about the coaching, and he went, "It's not ideal. We're professionals. We'll get on with it." What impact do you think it is that they don't know what's coming next?
It's a big impact, Ger, and this was always going to happen. It's been over nearly 4 months now since the Johan van Gran announcement came. It's too long. And look, I don't know why it's taken so long. There's probably some factors to that. See what candidates were interested in the job, assess that. And this is only speculation, and maybe waiting to see is there more people available. I think a lot of the top coaches throughout the world, and we you saw Ronan O'Gara ruling himself out. He just signed a 3-year contract last year. I think he probably would have been the number one choice. Scott Robertson in New Zealand. From what I was told, this wasn't public, ruled himself out, I think, because one of his kids is still in secondary school, and he wants to wait. Probably wants to wait and see what happens with the All Blacks, the World Cup and stuff, and also whether he'll move and to get one of his daughters through school, I think. So what candidates were available? So maybe that was a factor as well, and maybe the other side of it is then see how the season went for them, see how they progressed in the league and through this period around the Six Nations and stuff. But it's taken too long, and it does create uncertainty. There is absolutely no doubt the uncertainty hasn't helped them. And I suppose if you're a player in a group like that, you're confused as to where you're going, what's happening, and it probably has been a factor as well.
Okay. All right. The Leinster Connacht game this weekend, right? If you are Connacht, what are you trying to do in this first leg? Like, obviously, you want to win the game and you want to keep the score down as much as you possibly can to give yourself a fighting shot in the second game. But how do you do that?
Well, I think you have to get your own basics right. And, anyone who watched the game last week, Munster-Leinster, I think you have to be at your very best when you're playing them. They're probably going to be stronger. They'll probably have a stronger team this week, given they'll have some players back. You've got to get your basics really right, and you have to be tactically good. And I spoke about this in the podcast and maybe with you early in the week. Munster were quite poor in the kicking game, the kicking exchanges. Leinster had 13 lineouts in the game. Munster had 5. That tells you that Leinster weren't kicking the ball out. They were kicking it up the middle of the field a lot, playing that ping pong tennis game with their long kicking, and Munster kicked it straight back up in the air to them. Easy pickings for Leinster's back 3. They're able to launch attacks again. And if you allow Leinster, and it's very difficult, when I say the word allow, Ger, it's very difficult to stop them. But if you allow them continuously get into your half and build phases, they're going to hurt you eventually. The law of averages would say, if they're in there 10 times, they're a ruthless side who are very, very efficient when they get into that attacking zone, that they will punish you. They keep hammering away. They'll take some penalties, but more often than not, you're going to break down at some stage. Someone's going to make a mistake. They're going to wear you down. They're going to get through a tackle and they're going to finish it. And they have that ability around their decision making and their anticipation of someone making a line break and finishing things. So for Connacht, I think it's about just managing the game well, and that's where, whether it's Caelan Blade or Marmion and Jack Cartley, where they play with Connacht, they're a side that really want to play and throw the ball around a little bit. So you've got to be careful. Andy Friend is not going to tell his side this week, just kick the leather off the ball and you're going to beat Leinster. You're not. They have to play. But I think it's really important that they play in the right areas. They get their own set piece right. Connacht have had those issues this year. Scrum, their line-out has been pretty good. And you want to try and starve Leinster possession, so holding on to the ball. So it's very, very obvious, but I think the kicking game is where Leinster's game has gone up another level, and just been really efficient in where they played. Like, they kick the ball more. We've had these debates over the years, Ger, about, Munster kicked the ball too much. Well, Leinster kicked the ball 3 times more than Munster last Saturday night. But 29 times. Munster kicked it 26 times. So sometimes if you look at stats and you think, well, Leinster are kicking more than Leinster. They're boring to watch. They're not. It's where they're kicking and how they're kicking. So for Connacht, I think they've got to bring their A game. And dare I say, probably the most obvious thing is you've got to physically front up against them.
Okay.
They have a kind of a brutal force, Leinster, in the breakdown, and you've got to match that or try and at least get parity there.
One last question for you that came up during the week, and Keith Wood picked his team for the weekend, and he had Carby at fullback, and they were asked in the press conference this week about it, and Larkham said no plans to start him there at the moment. Is he a fullback? Would it be better to have Healy and Carby on the pitch at the same time for Munster at the moment?
Possibly. I think if Mike Haley is not available, I think it's an option. Ben Healy coming off the bench. Listen, I say this. Look, when you're chasing a game and you bring players off the bench, inevitably things are going to change around. The pace is going to pick up a little bit. Casey did that. Ben Healy did that. Is there a call? Should there be a call to start both of them and just go for it from the word go? These games are really intriguing because, and we haven't seen the situation. I think we've seen some playoff games over the years, but the back-to-back games that you usually get around in December with the old format.
Yeah.
Where those games are always about win your home game, and if you're playing a big game team in France or England, at least try and get a losing bonus point. We won a European Cup in 2008, getting a losing bonus point in Clermont. They can be vital. This is a little bit different. Like, there's a mental challenge to this when you're playing guys one week after the other, because if you lose a match and there's a bit of niggle, and you can get fired up for the next game, and sometimes they make no sense. So there's a real intrigue into the mental side of this. But these games are about managing the scoreboard. So we're probably hoping that the European, these round 16 games, that they're brilliant rugby and it's all about, attack. It's not. It's about, if you're 15 points down in the game with 2 minutes to go and you have a penalty, you're not kicking into the corner. You might be really assessing the scenario of bring that 15 points back to 12, kick the penalty. So we may see some of that, and it'll be really intriguing to see how they play out mentally for players.
All right, Quinny, good stuff. Enjoy the games. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
That's Alan Quinlan, host of the Red 78 podcast. You can get that by searching Red 78 in whatever podcast app you use, and it's available for download right